don't think there's enough talk about the lending and renting system that could or should be implemented into the Illuvium ecosystem, whether it be by a third-party organization or just have it put right into the Illuvium Illuvidex. Something like this, in my opinion, can increase the player base as much as 10x, and getting more players into the Illuvium ecosystem is what's going to make this game really blow up and strive, especially going into this next bull market. So I'm going to get into this concept that I have on the left here in just a moment. But first, let's talk quick about why renting and lending is so important in Illuvium. So the first problem is we want to bring as many players into Illuvium as possible. Even though we know through IMX and what the founders of Illuvium have talked about, that they want to make this a seamless process for anybody to get into Illuvium and have a free-to-play model so that nobody has to spend anything. I do think in order to keep those players in the ecosystem, they need to be able to progress through the game. And that leads into my second problem here, free-to-play burnout. If the free-to-play players don't have the means to add money in the future, they're going to be stuck traveling to the Stage 0 regions, collecting Tier 0 alluvials, and eventually they might just get bored and burnt out from it. So we want to give those players a way to progress through the game and continue to acquire assets of value, even if it's at a much slower pace than the people who are putting money in. Another thing we want is to prevent the sell pressure of the players in the community who are putting a lot of money in. And for example, even if they're putting a lot of money in, if they've got 50 Atlas and there's no reason for them to hold on to them other than price speculation, then there's going to be a lot of sell pressure on these alluvials. They're going to get put on the market just to get some liquidity. So you want to give these players who are accumulating a lot of alluvials a reason to hold on to those alluvials. And the next one would be esports or team or guild management. Being able to keep all the assets within one wallet and distribute them out from there, I think is the ideal situation for anybody in esports or, like I said, a guild or anybody who wants to start any of these sponsorships. The use case for rentals is that maybe someone's trying out a new deck and they think that the missing piece might be a Ramfire, but they don't want to just spend all that money on a Ramfire. They could go and rent it out for, a much cheaper price for a certain time frame, and then if they like it, they can decide whether they want to make the purchase or not. Or similar to that, they have an upcoming competition. Maybe they are involved in esports, or someone like the ETH Lizards are putting on an Illuvium tournament, and they know something like getting that Ramfire or getting that Adorius might be what they need to win that tournament. So they rent it out so they can use it in that competition, and then they give it back. And I think this rental and lending system can be done in two ways. It can be done for solo assets, like just renting one particular alluvial or not. But something that I've come up with here that I'm going to talk about would be package lending. So you can see in this mock-up I have here, this is what a package is going to look like. But you can also see, if you go into the filters, you'll have the buy now, the own by me, which already currently exists, and then you'll have the rent filter. And that's where you'll find these rental options. So for this package rentals or lending, the one problem that my idea solves when it comes to lending is that how are you going to determine what are your assets and what are the assets the renter already owns? And if you start mixing those in decks, how do you split any returns that come in? So this would be my solution. And if you used the package rental, you would have to keep that separate from the renter's actual assets. These packages would be a way for somebody to go out and play in the game without having to spend their money, but to acquire some assets to bring back to their personal account. And so I'll get into this in a little bit, but you can see for these package rentals, what you would do is you would include a certain amount of travel tickets, a certain amount of shards, certain deck of alluvials, augments, armaments, anything that you would need to go out into this overworld or even just into the arena, you would put into this package so the renter or the sponsor has everything they need. And you might think, as a lender, how do I know if the person who's renting these packages from me are going to do a good job? Or how do I know that they're going to make the most out of it? Like if you give them a travel ticket to a stage 3 region with very powerful alluvials and some tier 5 shards, you don't want them going into the region and just trying to catch tier 1 alluvials. So you can incentivize how they play the game with a % chance of getting that asset. And what I mean by that is within this package, you'll set the duration that they'll have this for, but you'll also set the chance of acquiring certain assets. So you can see here, if I was lending out this package and I didn't want them to catch tier 1 and tier 2 alluvials, I would put it at a 0% chance. And how this chance would work is, so say look at the tier 3, 40% chance. So if they catch a tier 3 alluvial, then when it's all said and done, you're going to use RNG to see who gets to keep that asset. So for that tier 3 alluvial that they caught, there'll be a 40% chance that the renter gets to keep it and a 40% chance that the lender gets to keep it. And this is how you can incentivize certain types of play. If you want them to go out and just focus on mining gems or orbs or shards, you can put catching alluvials at 0% chance. So there's no reason why that player would want to catch any alluvials. They would just focus on the minables because you'd be giving them, say a 40, 50, 60% chance of getting those minables. So that's how you could target these packages to get what you want out of it. And then from the renter standpoint, they're looking at all these details before they choose to rent something out. So if they see a package that has 0% chance for alluvials, but 50% chance for minables, and they just want alluvials, then they'll just choose not to rent out that package. So another thing that could be implemented into this to help these lenders as you go on is that if someone rented out your package and they did a really good job, like you wanted them to catch high tier alluvials and they went out and they did exactly what you wanted, you could favor that wallet or that renter. And then in the future, you could put out these packages so only your favorited wallets are able to rent it out. And on the contrary, if you had somebody who rented out your package and just did a horrible job, you could essentially put them on a banned list for your packages. So if you put it on the open market, that particular wallet won't be able to rent it out in the future. When it comes to these rentals, or what they used to call it, scholarships, people used to say, oh, you're just taking advantage of people who might be in third world countries and that it's slave labor. But to me, a free market is just the best way to go, especially in a model like this. These renters or sponsees are going to be looking through these packages and they're going to choose what they want. If all of the packages are set to such low percentages that it's not worth the renter's time, then they're simply not going to choose to do it. And having these packages all in, say, the Illuvidex, all stacked up on each other is really going to create some competition, which is going to be good for the sponsees because they're going to be able to look and compare one to another. Oh, this one's giving me a 40% chance to catch an alluvial, but this next one is giving me a 50% chance to catch an alluvial, so I'm going to take that one. And then the lenders who are putting out poorly composed packages, theirs are just going to sit there, and they're going to have to upgrade them to a point where it is worth it for these renters. And like I said, when you rent these packages, it would stay separate from the renter's complete wallet. So you wouldn't have to worry about mixing up assets or, shards, alluvials. These renters would just go in with what you have in this package. And then whatever doesn't get used in the package will just go right back to the lender. So if you put, 15 shards in this package and they only use 10 of those shards, you'll just get the 5 shards back at the end. And then package customization. So like I said, every part of this package will be able to be customized. So you could put this package out for free, which I think is going to be the best option, and then give certain percentages for different items that you can find and make those percentages high enough that it's worth it for the renters. Or you can choose to put a price on it and give the renter an even higher percentage chance of getting certain assets. So you would pick a duration. So you could pick 1 week, 2 weeks, you could pick 48 hours, however long you want to put this package onto the market. And you can go individually for every different asset on what percentage that renter has to keep that in the end. So like I said, you can have a percentage for each tier of alluvial. If you want them to go into the overworld and just look for tier 4 and tier 5 alluvials, then you put a 0% chance at tier 1, tier 2, and tier 3. So if these renters get into a battle and they have to choose between a tier 3 and a tier 4, they'll know if they try to catch that tier 3, even though it'll be easier, there's a 0% chance they get to keep it. But if they try to catch that tier 4, there's a 40% chance if they get to keep it. So it would just make sense for them to attempt that tier 4. Same thing with the minables. If you don't want them harvesting plants, you just put a 0% chance that they get those. If you want them to focus on finding shards, maybe you put a 60% chance on getting shards. So now they're really incentivized to go out there and maybe scan those rocks and find those shards. And we don't know if there's going to be any type of earnings in this game in terms of say ILV or ETH. But if there were earnings in this game, like say you win a match and you get a tiny bit of ILV, you could also set the percentage for that. So you could say 50% of whatever earnings in the game will go to you and 50% will stay with the renter. I can't think of any way that this system hurts Illuvium. It seems like it only helps the whole community in the project itself. If you see any flaws in this idea, please let me know in the comments down below. I do plan on running for the strategy sub-council in Illuvium, and these are the ideas that I want to bring up and possibly write IIPs for. And I'm constantly thinking of how everything comes together, not just helping out the investors in the community, not just helping out the DAO, not just helping out these free-to-play players, how it all comes together. And I think a system like this helps every aspect of Illuvium. And this is just something, a work in progress. I'd love to get some feedback on it. If I'm able to get onto that sub-council, I want to bring this up and kind of get everyone's idea. I'm also not a game dev, so I don't know how hard this would be to implement into Illuvium. But I think in the long run, things like this need to be talked about more. And if they can be implemented into Illuvium, I think it's only going to help in the long run. So I'm going to be putting out more stuff like this, especially when it comes to renting and lending, because I've always been big on that. So make sure you subscribe, like the video if you haven't already, and I'll catch you next time.